Dawn over Broome, Western Australia. Warm light on teal water. A purling lugger noses out across Roebuck Bay, timber creaking, diesel low and steady. This is routine work in the spring tides. Fast, technical, unforgiving. The crew is small and practiced. A skipper at the helm, a deck tender on the lines, and a veteran diver preparing for a drift along the flats where wild oysters cling to rock and reef. No names on the manifest here, just roles. Hands coil rope, a knife sits on a belt, brass fittings catch the sun. Air hoses and a lifeline are checked twice. The sea tells its own warning. Eddies scud across the surface. The tidal race stands up in ridges, water boiling where channels pinch and heave. Below deck, a tide table is marked for springs. On the dash, a deck clock ticks toward slack. The plan is simple. Drop in on the drift, keep line tension, surface on schedule. On the aft deck, the briefing is clipped and calm. The skipper points to the flow. The tender watches the gauges. The diver nods, measured breaths through the mouthpiece. Conditions are workable, they agree, fast, but within the team's limits. The first pass will be short. Signals reviewed. Knife, weights, belt, line, checked by touch. On the call, the diver rolls backward. A clean entry. Bubbles flower to the surface. The tender pays out hose and lifeline, glove over rope, feeling for steady pull. The bay slides past the hull at a walking pace, then faster. Line hums lightly. The lugger crabs across the flow to keep the diver off the shoals. On the gauges, stable air. On the line, a firm, rhythmic signal. Moving, searching, moving. The tender answers with two sharp taps, routine and precise. Then the texture of the sea changes. Wind against tide throws short, steep chop. The surface whitens, eddies shear past the stern. The hose twitches. The lifeline jerks, slack, then tight, then slack again, an odd pattern that doesn't match the diver's usual rhythm. The tender sends the recall signal, 3 hard pulls, and waits for the reply. Nothing. He tries again. Still nothing. The skipper glances from the clock to the tide notes to the white water building over the channel edge. He calls for a slow haul on the line. Line comes aboard heavy, then light, then shudders against something unseen below. The hose quivers. Bubbles reach the surface in scattered bursts, and then thin out. The tender leans over the transom, scanning for any sign, a float, a glove, a glint of mask, while the engine idles against the current. The surface settles to rippled glass between breaking lines. The last bubbles pop and vanish. Contact is lost. The first radio call went out over VHF from the lugger on scene. Position, bearings, sea state, relayed to shore control. Within hours, a coordinated search and rescue stood up. Police, volunteer marine rescue, naval tenders, and helicopters, all tasked and logged against the clock. Switchboards lit up and a forward post took charge. Small boats punched through the chop, dropping smoke and marker buoys, then turned to work surface sweeps along the headland. Crews called bearings, times, and drift on every pass. Search patterns were assigned, expanding squares from last known position and sector sweeps across likely drift lines. Shore teams scanned gutters and rock shelves, while patrol boats held the line just beyond the break, eyes on foam and shadow. Naval assets set up grid boxes. Deck crews readied grapnels and shot lines. Clearance divers kitted up for tactile seabed runs. A key decision point. Hold in-water dives at peak flow, resume only at slack when surge and shear eased enough to be workable. Overhead, helicopters flew low sweeps along datum lines. Winch operators scanned the brown-green water for any contrast. Cloth against kelp, float against foam, calling out bearings to boats below to tighten the net. On the plot table, grease pencil grids filled with times, tracks, and wind shifts. Sonar and radar helped map the bottom and surface clutter, while lookouts worked grid by grid, methodical and patient against restless seas. Conditions dictated caution: turbid water, kelp beds, jagged reef, and snag risks from ledges and moorings. Current shear across the reef line turned eddies unpredictable. One misstep could foul a line or pin a diver. Underwater visibility was near zero. When windows allowed, divers advanced by touch along shot lines, sweeping slowly for form or fabric. At peak tide, all in-water work stood down, safety first, then resumed as the flow slackened. Logistics kept the line tight. Fuel, fresh air bottles, batteries, and relief crews rotated to hold stations. But as tide and swell built, search windows snapped shut, forcing resets and redeployments with each change. Safety briefings repeated. First aid stayed ready. Boats cycled crews to manage fatigue while shore teams updated plots. What was covered, what required another pass when light or tide improved. Despite the scale and tempo, no confirmed finds emerged. No remains, no clothing, no gear. Every report was checked, every sighting rerun, with nothing verified. Parameters widened offshore as drift models expanded into the strait. With each added grid, probabilities thinned, but the patterns continued, square by square, sector by sector. On the headlands and at home, people watched and waited while volunteer marine rescue and police units kept cycling through tasks. Calls logged, sectors cleared, next light window planned. Attention spread quickly. Media tracked the updates, but on the water the cadence stayed the same. Plan, brief, execute, debrief, and mark the board. While authorities coordinated the broader response ashore, the search teams held to procedures, measured, accountable, and focused on coverage and safety above all else. By sunset, the tempo shifted from urgent rescue to sustained search. Lights came on over an empty sea, plots rolled to the next tide window, and the work continued, methodically and without conclusion. Just after midday on a summer Sunday in 1967, dangerous water met human decision. On coasts like Cheviot and in the pearling grounds off Broome, tides, rips, and reefs can align into a short, hostile window where even experienced watermen have little margin for error. Start with the hardware. Air systems are only as strong as their weakest link. Cracked hoses, worn couplings, or a kink can starve a diver in seconds. A failing deck compressor or a slipping drive belt drops pressure fast. An umbilical can snag on rock or kelp. A heavy weight belt can turn any tangle into entrapment. Then the human limits. Fatigue dulls judgment. At depth, nitrogen narcosis can cloud thinking and coordination. In low visibility, a silt out under a ledge, torch beam swallowed by turbidity, small problems stack. Panic tightens breath, burns air, and narrows options. Environment dictates terms. Spring tides drive fierce lateral flow, where reef gaps focus water, whirl-like structures and backwash can spin a diver off course. Rip and tidal streams don't read the shoreline. They follow channels you can't see from the surface. Northern waters add context. Broome's purling heritage tells hard lessons. Luggers worked short, tide windows. Umbilicals fouled on coral. Old helmets offered little forgiveness. Modern gear is safer, but hoses still kink, ropes still snag, and visibility can still vanish. Why are remains so often unrecovered? Heavy surf and kelp beds pin, tear, and conceal. Jagged reef snags hold fast. Swift shifting currents move anything free into deeper channels. Searchers fight the same forces. Boats and helicopters can't see through turbidity, and windows close with the tide. Predators? Possible, but unlikely as a primary cause. Crocodiles in the north and sharks elsewhere exist, yet there were no reliable reports of blood, strike behavior, or debris. In energetic surf, hydrodynamics, not teeth, are usually the first problem. Rumors fill the vacuum. Suicide theories ignore contemporaneous accounts of plans and good spirits. Sensational claims demand evidence. None credible has ever surfaced. Espionage tales, Secret subs, staged disappearances, persist because they are dramatic, not because they are supported. Decades of inquiry produced zero substantiation. The divide is clear. Myth thrives on absence. Fact builds from conditions. Hazardous surf, strong rips and tidal streams, poor visibility and equipment or human limits together form the most plausible chain. Most likely, a convergence, a rip or channel flow, a brief silt out, a snag or air shortfall, and the overwhelming force of moving water. No single failure, rather, several small ones aligning. Context matters. Stress, fatigue, and cold reduce reserves. But the physical evidence we do have points to an accident shaped by sea state and timing, not intrigue. With no remains, absolute certainty is out of reach. The ocean keeps many of its answers. What endures is a consistent picture: powerful tides and rips, treacherous reefs and kelp, fleeting visibility, and narrow tidal windows that punish hesitation. In sum, an experienced diver in a hostile moment of tide and chance. Respect the sea, read the window, know that sometimes the water wins. First, the official word. In 2005, the state coroner concluded an accidental drowning at a hazardous, restricted beach. No evidence of foul play or conspiracy, only powerful rips, heavy surge, and cold water. On that coast, conditions can turn deadly within seconds. So why was no body recovered? Tearing currents, kelp, and reefs can trap and break up a swimmer. Debris is quickly dispersed and drawn seaward. Within hours, remains can be swept into the strait. Today, memorials mark the loss, a plaque on the headland and a community swim center named in his honor. The naming remembers the man. It is not meant in jest. His disappearance reshaped protection, closer personal security, and stricter movement protocols. It also sharpened coastal safety awareness nationwide. Crews adopted stricter dive checks, redundant air gauge monitoring, surface-supplied protocols, tight tidal windows, and regular emergency drills. In Broome, the community reflects, the sea is livelihood and danger. Quiet services honor the loss. With respect, we remember, learn from the water, and keep a vigilant eye on the tide.